Média. Le monde, c'est nous.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it and very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of African Media. Thank you, African Media. Thank you for what you are doing.
The African continent, especially the West African sub-region, is currently undergoing what many deem to be a wind of change as concerns governance. Military coups, which used to be a regular occurrence in Africa in the years that followed independence, have resurfaced and have now become the order of the day. Since August 2020 to date, the continent has witnessed 5 coups, with the most recent being that of Guinea-Bissau earlier this week, which was reportedly thwarted. Earlier this year, the military ousted President Roch Marc Christian Kabore of Burkina Faso, blaming him for failing to contain violence by Islamist militants. A group of Malian colonels first seized power in August 2020 by ousting President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita following anti-government protests over deteriorating security, contested legislative elections, and allegations of corruption. A second coup occurred in May 2021 with Colonel Assimi Goïta taking over the presidency after coup leaders clashed with the new interim president, retired Colonel Bandor. Chad Army took power in April 2021 after President Idris Deby was killed on the battlefield while fighting rebels in the north. Special Forces Commander Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya led a coup in September 2021 against President Alpha Condé of Guinea, saying he acted because of poverty and corruption. Taking a look at all the coups that have taken place to date, one may conclude that the underlying causes that provoked them are insecurity, poverty, and above all, poor governance. The regional bloc, ECOWAS, has levied sanctions on these countries, but nothing seems to be changing. Rather, the populations of these countries have sided with the military and thrown their support behind them with the hope that things could change for the better. How then is this wind of change going to affect the West African sub-region and the continent at large? This is Views on the Continent. Stay with us.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it and very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of African Media. Thank you, African Media. Thank you for what you are doing.
It is always our pleasure to know you are watching Africa Media. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this other edition of Views on the Continent, where we take a look at very burning issues that are affecting the continent at this point in time. And our focus this day is the wind of change that has been sweeping across Africa, especially the West African sub-region. Now we are talking about military coups. Now about 3 countries in the sub-region have witnessed coup d'etat in the last few months, and it seems to be continuing, with the latest being an attempted coup in Guinea-Bissau. However, that coup is said to have been thwarted. What then is happening in Africa with military coups happening now and then? That's going to be a point of discussion this day on the program. Now, military coups occurred in the continent some years that followed independence by most African countries, and after a while, this coups stopped. But now coups seem to be the order of the day in the continent. So that is what we want to look at this day on the program, to see why these coup d'etats are occurring and what is actually happening on the continent, if these coup d'etats are affecting the continent negatively or positively, and what the way forward to see how good governance is being applied on the continent. And of course, we have a resource person with us this day to take a look at this very pertinent issue that has been taken hold of the continent in the past few months, and that's in the person of Mr. Andrin Atem Ebako. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program this day.
Thank you very much, and all the viewers of Africa Media. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. And in the minutes that follow, together with Mr. Atami Bako, we shall be dissecting why coups are occurring more recently in the continent, and what is the way forward, and what African leaders are trying to do to see how they can avert these coups or promote the coups, if at all it is something that is going to benefit the continent. And of course, this is an interactive program where you can always call and have your say, and when the time will come, our numbers will be put on the screen so that you can call us and tell us what you think about the day's topic or any other issue that is affecting the continent at this point in time. But before we do that, let us first of all listen to this report done for us by Sharon Jigs, and in her report she's trying to find out why these coups have been occurring of late. Take a listen.
Military coups have become the new norm in West Africa, as about 4 countries have been hit by this phenomenon, which to some is a disturbing factor and to others a liberating factor. Emboldened by popular anger, militaries in Mali, Guinea-Conakry, Burkina Faso, and a few days back an attempted coup in Guinea-Bissau, which the conditions are not yet clear, have taken matters into their hands. Staging 4 coups in 18 months has had reactions pouring out from all over the globe, mostly in the African continent. After the reaction of some bodies, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda in East Africa, during a video conference from Kigali in preparations for the European and African Union Summit to take place in Brussels on February 17 and 18, said he believes that the recent coups are consequences of bad governance, not leaving out the negative role played by some citizens to crumble the country, while pointing a finger at the Putschist soldiers. He said, if under a civilian government the situation deteriorates and people die, the problems accumulate and authorities use the military to rig the elections, who is to blame when the army overthrows these governments? I find it inappropriate to only criticize the military and not blame the civilians who use them to hold on to power. I can imagine that it is from these kind of analyses that some say they are good and bad coups, Kagame said. Several analysts are of the motion that persistent coups in West Africa and to a greater extent in other countries across the continent are a result of corruption and governance systems, with some of the opinion that the wind of change can take these countries out of the hands of imperialists. According to reports, Burkina Faso's history, for instance, is rated to have had the most successful coup attempt, as Burkinabés took to the streets to celebrate the ouster of President Roch Marc Christian Kabore. The military junta in Mali, on the other hand, has been condemned for wanting to hold on to power for the next 5 years. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has come under heavy criticisms of the way they are handling the different coups under their bloc. The ECOWAS, in its Protocol of Conflict Management and Resolution, has asserted its zero tolerance for power obtained or maintained by unconstitutional means. In the span of 18 months, ECOWAS has sanctioned countries like Guinea-Conakry, with Mali getting harsher sanctions. The West African bloc will today hold an emergency summit in Accra, Ghana, to discuss the coups in the region. However, speaking and listening to many Africans, they think the time for change is now, while some are not happy about the coups. Despite the mixed feelings about the coups, as most say, the coup in Mali is a good one but not the others. Others think all are good or bad. Many questions keep coming up as to if change can only come with the coups, what is causing the coups, are more on the way, and what lessons can be learned from these acts.
That's a detailed report as to why coups are occurring in Africa, especially in the West African sub-region of late. So if you are just joining us, this is Views on the Continent, and we are looking at coups in Africa that has become the new norm. Is this a good thing for the continent? Is it a bad thing for the continent? That's what we are trying to find out today, and also we are trying to find out why these coups are occurring often of late, and what needs to be done if these coups have to be stopped, or if they have to be promoted. We are going to be looking at all that in the course of this program. And like I mentioned earlier on, it is an interactive program. And when the time will come, our lines will be opened so that you can call us and tell us what you think about the day's topic or any other issue that is affecting the continent. And with us in the studio, like I mentioned earlier on, is Mr. Andrew Atam Ebako. He is a Pan-Africanist. Now, Mr. Ebako, when you take a look at Africa at this point in time, especially West Africa, we know of about 3 or 4 countries that have witnessed coup d'etat of late. What can you say about this new wind of change that is sweeping across Africa?
Well, I think it is inevitable, and I think that the time has come over Africa and Africans to rise up and stand for their rights and to pursue the right to self-determination. And if you look at Africa, for over how many years we're talking about the independence of the African people, you come to realize that the democracy which Africa has been struggling to practice and struggle to keep has only divided the people, has created poverty, has created bad leadership, has created insecurities, has created corruption. It has left the people in great division where Africans are fighting Africans. And that is why Africans at this point, we have decided to stand behind coup leaders, because we have come to realize that that is the only way that the people's voice can be heard. We have seen that in Mali, we have seen that in Burkina Faso, we have seen that in Sudan, we have seen that in Guinea-Conakry and Guinea-Bissau. So what am I trying to say here is that if the ECOWAS was never voted by the Africans, if the AU was never voted by the masses of the African people, and the AU and the ECOWAS has been laying sanctions on all of these coup leaders and this nation, when yet the African people never voted them to power, that simply means that the Africans also have the right to decide to stand behind coup leaders without election. And that is why they are pursuing, like Assimi Goïta is trying to say, that he has 5 years at least to see that the country has gained stability. The people know where the vision of the nation is going to, where everybody comes together to build an economy, build a nation whereby the Africans can find a future in their own countries. We are talking here of corporate America. We are talking here of multinationals that come in with heavy giant companies to loot out the resources of the nation. As a matter of fact, leave the people again in abject poverty. We have been running down this road trying to struggle to build a relationship with EU, UN, and the West. It has not worked for African people. As a matter of fact, Africa today has now become how will I call it, a market which is owned by very few people, where the masses live in an untold suffering, misery, diabolic situation where Africans are going through today, where the story today of Africa has become a one which people don't want to hear anymore. So Africans at this point, we are deciding to come together. We are deciding to build unison and understand that we have a common problem. And on the basis of this, our common problem, we have decided to come together to decide our own future. Because as a matter of fact, the masses you see today going out on the streets, standing behind all of these coup leaders, it is their future that we are talking about. So they want to be in charge of their own future. They want to have the right to self-determination. We want to build an Africa where it provides room for Africans to grow in Africa. We want to provide, a society whereby Africans can be proud of their own culture, can be proud of their own identity, can be proud of their own nation, can be proud of their own personality, and can find a future in their own continent. But to live in countries where your nations are heavily rich, but they are heavily exploited by multinationals, where they appoint leaders as far as democracy is concerned. With all the divisions that democracy has created, it allows puppet leaders to come to power where they abide by rules and treaties to keep the existing interest of the imperialists in Africa at the detriment of the African people. And we have realized that allowing leadership in the hands of 3.3% or 15% of the people, it is a huge challenge, because they have not stood to reflect the demands of the people and the demands of their own society. So at this junction, Africans have decided, because they have understood today what is happening in Africa, that if they don't get into the place of decision making, if they don't get into the place of leadership, if they don't get to a place whereby their voices can be heard, they will perish in their own nation. So this is what Africans at this point are doing. And I want to believe that the military at this point is playing a very vital role in some of these countries because, like I keep saying, the military is always a medium between the state and the population. So whereby the government is not meeting the demands of the people. I mean, you cannot talk about African nation knowing how damn rich this nation are, but you go there, you find one of the most poorest people on earth in Africa, living with governments that are swimming in wealth, swimming in all kinds of how will I call it, resources, whereby these resources do not get to the people. This is what we are talking about today, and this is what they claim, that democracy, it gives people the right to freedom, it gives people the right to self-determination. This is the kind of democracy they are talking about, whereby it abuses the African people. It leaves the African people with no identity, with no sense of focus, with no future, no destiny, no education, no health. You go to some of these countries, health becomes a huge challenge, whereby the people do not even have access to medical attention. They do not have access to medical health. They do not even get good education. This is for the kind of democracy we are talking today in Africa. So we are tired of democracy, and we are saying that Africans today, we need to start learning to stand behind leaders that have the interest for the people. We must not go in to believe that we can only get leaders through election. It has never worked for Africa, and we are at the point whereby if we see any leader who has shown his desire and his will to sacrifice his life for the people, Africans worldwide needs to stand behind such leaders, and we don't need such leaders to be democratically elected. We will push them to power and let them declare themselves head of state or head of those nations and lead those nations to whereby bring the people up into the place whereby the people can feel that they belong in Africa. Africans today are living in Africa as foreigners. They are living in their own country as strangers, where you have foreigners that have more rights in Africa than Africans themselves. Africans are running out of Africa because of poverty. You build in systems that create poverty, that create instability, that creates sicknesses, that creates crimes. And the people who are the makers of these crimes are the ones that the laws are protecting. And those that are victims of these systems are the ones that the laws are punishing. We cannot be building policies and laws and systems in Africa which works against the African people. And that is why we are saying that we do not want, at this junction where we are in Africa, we are at war. We are underdeveloped. We are under civilized, and we are struggling to civilize ourselves and to find our own civilization and to identify ourselves by ourselves as Africans. In other words, to make Africa a place where all Africans can come together, like you are seeing today in Mali. In that crowd, you have Hindus, you have Buddhists, you have Baha'i, you have Christians, you have Muslims. Africans today have grown past that level where they have set aside the things that keeps them aside and divides them in order for them to come together on the basis of the things that brings them together, so that they can overcome their own common struggles as a people, whereby they can provide for themselves what their government is expecting others to come and provide for Africans. It's another definition of a madman who expects another person to do for him what he can do for himself. Africans have come of age. We do not need leaders who will go and submit themselves at the level of the IMF and the World Bank, who got no value, and sell out their resources, the value of their nation. And at the expense of these resources, it causes the human resources to go into what I call voluntary slavery, because the Africans at one point live in abject poverty because their leaders have become gatekeepers and barriers to their own destinies, whereby they are allowing others, like I keep saying, enemies of Africa, to progress and to develop their own nation at the detriment of the African people. Do you know, when we are talking about human rights abuses and all of that, where we are seeing how we have a government in place, we are talking here of a coup leader who is asking for 5 years to stabilize his country. When Sankara took over power, nobody asked for election. When Muhammad Gaddafi took over power, nobody asked for election. J.J. Rawlings, nobody asked for election, but we saw what those people have done. Let this as democratically elected president, let them tell us these exploitations of the multinationals in Africa. How do we adjust and how do we amend those things in our parliament which are never discussed? And yet the Africans, like certain other countries, in every 10 years it produces almost 8 to 9 million poor Africans. And Africans are so rich, but yet they are poor in their own land. And this is what we are saying, that such leaderships, we do not want them anymore in Africa. We want leaders that will grow from the doors of the masses, that will leap up from the soils of the people, that come amongst the people and go with the people into the place of decision, into the place of leadership, into the place of destiny, so that it becomes a collective, a nation building, and not a one whereby we sit and we have presidents, we do not even know what is their vision, what is their goal, what are the agenda, what are the things that they are keeping as an inheritance for their own people. We are tired of such leaders. As a matter of fact, now in Africa, we are going to decide those that are going to be in charge of Africa. We are done with this system of democracy whereby it is set by the UN, set by the US, how we should have leaders elected in governments whereby such leaders become weapons of mass destruction against their own people. How do we go in a democratic election to elect presidents that come at the end of the day work against the African people? This is not what we want. We do not want elections anymore in Africa. And if any such country is having an election, let us go behind leaders and not politicians, people who have goodwill for their nation. Let us stand behind them and forget this game and business of politics. We are done with politics. It's a matter of life and death. In every battle, there are two things that happen. Either you are killed or you kill. And we are going to do so for self-defense if we must do in order to protect Africa. So they are leaving us with no choice than to step out on the street and fight for our rights.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atam Ebaku. If you're just joining us, this is Views on the Continent, and we are talking about military coups that have come back to the fore in Africa. And like I mentioned earlier on in the program, we used to hear of military coups in the years that followed independence in the continent, and now this has resurfaced, and it is the order of the day, especially in the West African sub-region. So our lines are open. You can call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. What can be done? Is this the way forward for Africa to gain the position that it wants in the global context? Is this what is going to take Africa from the hands of so-called imperialists? That's the question we are asking this day on the program. Now, Mr. Atam Ebaku, do you think these military coups are what the continent needs at this point in time, and is it the right approach in solving the continent's problems?
Well, as a matter of fact, looking at the structures in place and then looking at where we are coming from history, looking at our founding fathers, what they have done, and the level and numbers of assassinations that have been carried out in Africa by African leaders who sought or seek the interest for their own people, by the United Nations, by the US, and by the CIA and the FBI in Africa, due to democracy, where they build systems where it causes the people to go in divided ranks and then get in leaders that will always create division, tribalism, civil conflict, and then always do what I call regime change, where a leader does not accept to their interest or the treaties of the imperialists, then they find another way either to assassinate you or do what we call a regime change, like what we saw in Libya. So we have understood all of this game which democracy has brought to us. They had an evil intention from the very beginning in the 60s when Africa was being reborn by the West, at which time in America, in the South Georgia, where you have very barbaric and wicked human beings that killed black people in America, at which time America was in serious segregation, killing our people, selling children, using children to catch crocodiles in the sea, raping of black women. And here Africans were here celebrating an independence that has come with the condition of democracy. At this point, Africa, our generation as Africans, will never bypass this liberation. They may have succeeded with all these leaders, as we have built analysis that change will never come from this leader. It can only come from the masses of the African people. So we have assumed our responsibility. We know that the problems are caused by the imperialists, but we are the solution. So if we fail in applying this solution, which we know in what we must do as a people to overcome, then we even become more worse than the imperialists. So we are now assuming the responsibility that change lies in the African people. So that is exactly what the African people are doing. They are doing what they must do in order to survive, because that is the only way. If you allow your destiny in the hands of people like this democratically elected president, how does ECOWAS lay sanction on Mali? Is this not a taboo in our tradition? This is witchcraft in open daylight. So the UN and EU has decided to turn ECOWAS into a microphone to insult the African people. So we have assumed our position that ECOWAS will lose relevance in Africa. AU will lose relevance in Africa as far as the African masses are concerned, both home and abroad, because such organizations today have become promoters of imperialism in Africa. They have refused to stand behind the vision of our founding father, Assimi Goïta, who sprang from the doors of J.J. Rawlings, Thomas Sankara, and many other founding fathers who have sought for the interest of the African people to make Africans self-sufficient. We know how Mali is rich in terms of natural resources, but the masses of its people live in abject poverty. This is a huge challenge whereby we are talking of nations that should be controlling currency. It should have been Africa because of its value it has. How does America control the value of the world by dollar when it has no value? These are the challenges that we need to ask ourselves, because if you are the one in charge, you should be the one to determine how your currency is going to function, how you are going to export your raw material or your finished product, and how you are going to run your economy and your politics. But Africa is not in that position because they have subjected Africa into what I call another dimension of systematic slavery at the level of the United Nations. As a matter of fact, we have had a vital founding fathers like Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, may his precious soul rest in peace. How much did he fight that if ever the United Nations is going to survive, they should give Africa 2 permanent seats to have what they call veto. The veto was not voted for these few nations to keep veto power. Why do they retain veto and they allow Africans to be marginalized and to be enslaved even at the level of the UN National Security Council? So if we must boycott the United Nations, let it be so. But this will take the unity of the African people to come together both home and abroad and build this unity so that Africa can begin to build its own system, its own economy, its own education, its own politics, so that we can learn to live together with the world by living apart, like how North Korea is doing. They are living with the world by living apart. And this is what we must do as a people if we have to protect our own identity.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ebakoh. Our lines are open. If you're just joining us, this is Views on the Continent, and we are talking about military coups that have become the order of the day in the continent, and especially in West Africa. We know of Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Conakry, and of late Guinea-Bissau, where, of course, it was reported that the coup was thwarted, and it has been termed an attempted coup. So we would like to hear from you. Our numbers on the screen. You can call us and tell us what you think about this phenomenon that is taking over the continent. Is it the right way for Africa to solve its problems, and how is it going to benefit the people of Africa? That's what we would like to find out from you. You can call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. Now, coming back to you, Mr. Atem Ebakoh, what, in your opinion, what do you think the current leaders in the continent are not doing right for this wind of change to be sweeping across the continent, and what form of governance do you think can go for Africa at this point in time?
Well, like I said, we are underdeveloped, and at the same time we are at war. So at this time we cannot follow the normal procedures of how leadership is supposed to be. So what Africa needs right now is people like Assimi Goïta, people like Sankara, late Sankara. Okay. We need dictators. We need individuals who know what is good for their nation. We need strong men who can build and lift up the standards of their people, build a vision whereby it can harmonize and weld up all the differences of the nation, so that everyone knows their responsibility in order to develop that nation according to the vision that has been set in place. And all of these things takes time. It's not going to happen in a year. So Assimi Goïta and all of these other coup leaders will need time, because this is what we need right now. As a matter of fact, we need coup leaders. We do not need democratically elected president, because today Africa has become now a football team where we are struggling between democratically elected president and coup leader. But we, the African people, we are standing behind coup leaders because, as a matter of fact, each time we go in to vote, people die.
That's right.
A lot of insecurities and conflicts, and then it creates what I call tribalism, and then it keeps pending conflicts to come even in the next presidential election. So we already know this road. We are tired of the road. We don't want this road anymore. We just want natural leaders who will come up as God-sent people. And then when we identify them, our people stand behind them, and it's period. Because if democracy is looking for the majority, already we have the majority in Mali, so there should be no need for elections. It's as simple as it is, because the idea of democracy is that we should go and look for majority. But each time we get majority, they all come from minority groups, which, as a matter of fact, you cannot say these are majority, because you cannot consider a 2 million population in a country of 26 million to become the majority. That's another form of madness. So now we have decided that since we can identify leaders that are natural, not artificial, not those ones who will come and make promises, we will build you schools, we will give you good health, we will build you good economy, we will create more jobs, and then when they get into power, it's only their own family and their personal life and the West that does well, and all those promises, it is all fulfilled in the West and not in Africa. So this kind of leaders is what Africa today is struggling now between coup leaders and democratically elected presidents. As a matter of fact, all those democratically elected presidents who are laying sanctions in Mali, what have they done compared to even what Assimi Goïta has done for the few 2 or 1 year that he has been in power in Mali? We have seen how he has been able to push away the imperialists out of Mali. And this is what the ECOWAS should have been doing. That was a role that AU adopted from the OAU to decolonize Africa and harmonize all these 54 states in order to work together simultaneously as a body. We do not want Rwanda to do well while Cameroon is in conflict. This is not the kind of Africa we want. We don't want a monster where a tail becomes a head according to the definition of Western democracy, and I become a head according to the definition of democracy. We want a full body that each person knows his role and know what they must contribute in order to develop Africa. We want one Africa where all these nations, we don't want the nations to be identified separately. We want them to understand that this is Africa and Africa is for Africans. We don't want all these border barriers. We want dual nationalities, which opens room for Africans in the diaspora to have full access back to Africa. What kind of policies or democracy we are talking of, both home and abroad in America? Young unarmed babies, they will point guns of almost 20 police officers will be pointing gun at an unarmed black man just because he is a black man. We are tired of the West and their so-called democracy and their so-called friendship with Africa, when yet the kind of barbaric act they are carrying out over the Africans in the diaspora is untold and is unheard. Very wicked human beings. And these are the kind of people that Africans want to build alliance with. We are tired. We want leaders who know what is good for their people. Africans should go in, if it's in a moment whereby some accidentally they have to vote. Vote in the one you know that is going to die for you people. These are the kind of leaders we need in Africa. We don't want leaders who will sacrifice their people just to stay alive. We want leaders like Assimi Goïta, who is ready to die for his people, just so that Mali should get free away from the hands of the French, and the Malians' resources can be used in developing the lives of the Mali or the Malian people and the African people in general.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atabe Bako. Our lines are open. You can call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. Military coups are becoming a norm in Africa. What can you say about that? Is it the right way forward for the continent? We would like to hear from you. Our lines are open. We already have indications of our first caller on the line, Mr. Martin, calling us from Douala. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program. Can we get Mr. Martin calling us from Douala, Cameroon? Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program. We seem to be having a little problem getting through to Mr. Martin. We keep calling, and we shall be getting your contributions in the minute that follow. And you can also call us wherever you are. Even you can call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. Now, Mr. Attorney Bako, now let's take a look at what the regional body, ECOWAS, has been doing so far in trying to solve this issue of coups that have taken hold of the country, of the continent of late. We know ECOWAS has placed sanctions on most of these countries where coups have taken place. Do you think that is the right approach, and how is it going to help in solving the continent's problems, or the problems that these particular countries are facing at this point in time?
Well, there is no doubt that the ECOWAS is defending democracy. That is the basic truth. That is the struggle the ECOWAS is having with these coup leaders and nations that are going through this transition. They want to protect democracy because it is this democracy that has made them to be what they are. And they feel that it is democracy that has given them relevance in their nation. If it were not democracy, Nana Addo will never be president because he does not have courage to become a coup leader. If it were not democracy, Buhari would not be a president in Nigeria. It's only because the imperialists keeps using this democracy to look the best team and the best players who will go there and keep their existing treaties, build organizations such as AU to continue or a continuation of imperialism or colonialism in Africa. That is the role of the ECOWAS. Because to see somebody who is taking sides with an enemy at the detriment of his own people in the name of democracy is another definition of madness. So the sanction that the ECOWAS is laying on Mali and all of these other nations, like Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, and so on and so forth, who elected ECOWAS? That is another question. Who elected the AU? It is not by the African people. As a matter of fact, it was not by the African people. So what gives the ECOWAS right or the audacity to lay sanction in a nation which is still fighting for its self-determination? A nation which is held captive by a very dangerous imperialist by history we know, France. A very wicked and diabolic how will I call it, colonial master. And then people have been able to rally themselves. The efforts the Malians did to reach at this level, the ECOWAS should have been applauding them and standing behind them, funding them, supporting them. As a matter of fact, when the Tigrayans were approaching Addis Ababa, AU left Africa. We did not hear a voice from AU. At the city of Addis Ababa, where the headquarters of the African Union is, which was built by the Chinese people, another taboo to the African people. This is where our leaders have been able to leave us. They have decided to enter into a cult called democracy, a secret society called democracy, to sacrifice and to offer their own people at the detriment of these wicked human beings. How can EU be sitting down on what is happening in Africa? How does it concern them? What does EU do? Has AU become a clando where by EU sits on AU for AU to lead EU to where? AU was supposed to be for the African people. Why does EU? So EU now sits on AU so that EU should get first to its own destination before the African people get. So in other words, if Europe does not get, Africa should not have. Because I do not understand whether AU today has now become mid-foreign or a transport vehicle where it carries passengers on the road and then begins to drop each man at his own destination. So EU too decided to journey, a journey which belongs to African people. It decides to sit inside of AU. So this is what we are saying, that this organization called AU, in our generation, we will make such organization become irrelevant in Africa. Because it is our destiny they were supposed to be managing. And we have realized that it is rather selling us out into what I call voluntary slavery and civil conflict, instability, poverty, and death. The rate of death alone in Africa due to poverty is very alarming. In certain countries, like, how will I call it, in certain other African countries, you almost have 16,000 road accidents every year, which cost the lives of 1,000 plus 500 Africans every year. And these are the things that we are dealing with such leaders. That they live off well, bank their money in the West. When they fall sick, they go to the West. Everything about them is the West. As a matter of fact, it is like Africa has now become their office and the West has become where they live. These are the kind of people we are talking. So we do not want we do not want democratically elected president who, and when Magufuli entered into power, for 5 years he was eliminated because he refused all the debts which Tanzania was owing. He began a fresh phase in Tanzania. And that was a major challenge to the West, to have a president in seat who does not cooperate and abide to keep or to retain the existing treaties in Africa at their own advantage. And they term you a dictator. Why? Because you are functioning using a system which you agreed for them to bring to you. So we do not, as Africans, we are Africans. We are going to decide who are those that are going to be in charge in Africa. And we are saying that all these democratically elected presidents who have refused and have abided by this cult that the United Nations has tied them, where every year they go to summits at the UN in Washington, D.C. to hold meetings which does not meet the demands of the African people. As a matter of fact, Africans are absent in Africa because of such leadership. So we as a generation and as a people, we are going to push Pan-Africanism as an upgraded version and the only system which can give Africa and African peace in Africa and also rescue the world from the destruction which is pending by the United Nations. Democracy has been very abusive, not only to the African people, but as well in the West, even in the period of the COVID. The rights of the people have been abused. You go in different European countries, you see how the police forces that have been made to think like robots and missionaries are beating up their own citizens to force them to take vaccine, which is against their own human rights. This is a democracy we are talking of. So if the world is going to give Africans the chance to promote Pan-Africanism, the right leaders are going to emerge out of Africa and they are going to set Africa, bring order in Africa, whereby Africa becomes a place where all Africans can find an opportunity in spreading the right truth and building the right leadership, which even the West can copy from Africa. Even the West can implement what Africa is doing in order to stabilize Africa. So Africa is supposed to be an example to the world, and we are deciding, and we have decided to make it so that the world can learn from what Pan-Africanism is all about. It's not only about Africa. It's not only about the African. It's ensuring a better life for all human beings in this world. That is what Pan-Africanism is all about, because the order of leadership, prosperity, peace can only come from Africa. If Africa has been the source and the foundation of the civilization of the West, and all the finest minds in the world are from Africa, that simply means that Africa is a symbolic place, and we know why we are advocating for Africa to have the right to self-determination, because we understand that if the world is going to get better, Africa will have to be united, whereby our people that are in the diaspora can be liberated from this systematic slavery, whereby they are treating them as orphans because they have been able to disassociate them away from their own motherland and from their own birthright, taking them away from their identity. So they have now become people who got no value, and so then they are treated anyhow. We want to bring back these Africans back to Africa and give them this sense of identity and this sense of belonging, so that the world can become a better place.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ebaku. This is Views on the Continent, and we are talking about military coups that have become the order of the day in the continent, especially in the West African sub-region, and our lines are open. We still have a few more minutes to be on the program. We have indications that Mr. Martin is back. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program. Is Mr. Martin there? Can we have Mr. Martin? Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Hello, Laurencia and the panelists. I am Martin calling from Douala. Yes, Laurencia,
Well, military coup so far, they might not be the right move, but they might also act in some way in solving our own problems if so far our leaders and the so-called democracy have actually failed. If you look critically, Laurencia, you start asking yourself, democracy, we are bringing a leader to power. For what purpose? And what is he supposed to do within that period? We also ask ourselves whether the democracy that we so talk about, whether it is really effective in Africa. You just look at it, it is automatically another kind of a coup by a group of civilians. And all these things are always orchestrated by what? Western countries. Look at what happened even in Gabon. In less than no time, even before the election was even finished or before they announced the result, France has already sent congratulations. That is a coup d'etat. A coup does not only mean the military. And when it goes to a certain level, we see the people have nothing. The people are powerless. Then now you see they start supporting the military. If at all, the military coup, it is actually genuine. But if it is genuine and it is from the people, then I think it is actually welcome. Let's not forget, Laurencia, that states are for what? States are for the citizens. The citizens are the owners of the states and not the so-called leaders or the president. The so-called leaders, they have just been given a mandate to manage. It's just like a company with a chief executive officer that have been appointed by the board of directors. So the people, they give that election for you to be their servant and to be able to fulfill the manifesto that you presented to them. If you cannot, then the people have a right to take a stance for you to go. And in Africa, is that possible that the people can demonstrate democratically and the leader goes? No. You see what happens when they get to power, or before they get to power, you see them very honorable, they bring a lot of manifesto, but when they get to power, automatically they use taxpayers' money against the very people that are paying the tax. So you look to Laurencia, increasingly there are no jobs. The youths are hungry. You look at, they have nothing to do. They are just there. They just come and sing praises and send out our resources to Western corporations, particularly France. Look at what is happening now in that side of Africa. Just what? French colonies. French colonies. That's going to tell you the imperialist crime that they have actually committed in those countries for decades. Look at what happened even to Thomas Sankara up to date, simply because he said he wanted a free Africa. A free country they wanted to use. Look at what happened to Magufuli, because he was advocating for his interest of his country, and they proved it that they have the resources can develop. Look at what happened to Gaddafi. All those, they are what? They are coups. They are not only coups when it's the military that has actually overthrown. What of it, the situation whereby we actually know the results of the election, but the president refused to go. And you see Western organizations, they start nominating and sending in their support, that they support him and giving him congratulations. That is a coup d'etat. So we not only look at it as a negative corner, but if they are just egoism for the military, they also want to be in power. You see, they start coming in and struggling to this and that. It is actually wrong. But when the mandate is coming from the people, I think it is right. And I think that the military coup, they will always be so very important if at all they generate from the people, and if sincerely they have no link with colonial powers so far. If their main agenda is for them to actually use their military might to overthrow colonialism, I think it is actually welcome, like what happened in Mali. If in Mali, if the military in Mali, they're actually sincere and they're cutting off ties with France and other Western colonies to be able to form their genuine economy, I think it is actually welcome. It might not be a good approach, but we must only give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. You see them, the Western corporation, what do they talk about? Oh, they will help us militarily, or they will build us bases, or they are going to train us on counter-terrorism, and when they're staying in the continent, they are still there. You see, looking even where their interests are, all of them, they are there with their military might so far. Then you say the military should not come in. The military can actually come in to be able to gain the support of the people to make sure that they defend them for their interest. Because all these things, two elephants are fighting. It is who are suffering? The normal civilians who have given the so-called puppet president's mandate. Once more, Laurencia and Co. Nice day.
Mr. Maurice Martin, for your contribution This is Views on the Continent, and we have a few more minutes to be on the program, and we are talking about military coups. We have another caller on the line. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program. Tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and go ahead with your contribution.
Good evening to Madam. Nahako. Yeah, the problem is that in Africa we have all many people they don't know that they go to Canada, they use right? I did it because we can't imagine they are killing in Africa.
Said, or you turn down the volume of your receiver. All right, you can still try to get to us and tell us what you think about today's topic. Please, we would like to appeal that when you call us, you step away from your television set so that we can hear you clearly. And that caller can always get back to us. We still have a few more minutes to be on the program. And we are talking about military coups now, Mr. Atame Bako. We have a few more minutes to be on the program now. Many a times, leaders on the continent have been likened to puppets of the West. Do you think this wind of change will actually free Africa from the hands of imperialists?
Yes, that is the agenda, and that is what we as African youths, that's what we stand for. We stand for change, we stand for self-determination, we stand for an Africa which is built by Africans. We stand for an Africa which has no influence coming from the West, an Africa which is able for Africans to do for themselves what they know is best for them. This is the kind of Africa that we want to build, an Africa where we'll be able to have pride to ourselves and for ourselves. Effective leadership in Africa is only going to come from the masses of the African people's unity. That is going to give birth to genuine leadership in Africa. That simply means that the African people are going to participate fully in the leadership process of their own future and that of the coming generation. Secondly, I want to say that Assimi Goïta has done something where history will always live to remember him. We have always known the West to build systems in Africa for Africans to fight against themselves. Assimi Goïta is the only leader so far that has been able to cause imperialists to fight among themselves by using Russia against the West, by using China and Russia against AU and against the ECOWAS. Assimi Goïta has played a game in Africa where history will always live to remember him. We have always been hearing that Africans hate themselves. Today we can say that the veto members are now fighting among themselves because of one man called Assimi Goïta in a small Mali, which people like Nana Addo Buhari and all those other heads which are big have not been able to do. So this is the kind of Africa that we want to sponsor. We want to be able to push our agenda forward, because we do not want an Africa where we have democratically elected presidents who get into power and then seem to own the property of the nation in the absence of their own people. It's like a man who acquires his father's property without the consideration that the father has other biological children. This is what democracy has brought to Africa. We have seen presidents as witches and wizards, not because they have bad will for their people, it's because they have entered into a cult. If we knew from the beginning that democracy was a secret society, we would have taken a different approach. We knew that it was giving the Africans the right to decide what they want. But we came to realize that each time they go out to decide their future, they come from very small minority groups, which kills and dissolves the power and the will of the people. A country's destiny becomes a game of chance where they gamble where the country is supposed to go to. So we have understood all this game, and Africans are now saying all over the world, we don't want democracy. Let the colonialists leave Africa with their systems, their structures, their currency, and allow Africans to manage themselves. That is our position for Africa today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atemebako. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. And it is on that note that we are going to draw the curtains on today's edition of Views on the Continent, what Africa needs at this point in time, or what is actually clear for Africans is that democracy is not a form of governance that Africa, that is good for Africa, and Africans are gradually waking up from slumber, according to some analysts, and Africans have to take their destiny into their hands, and by so doing, putting aside leaders that are not there for the good of their own people. Now, another edition of the program comes up tomorrow at the same time that 14 hours GMT. Do join us to take a look at another interesting issue that is affecting the continent at this point in time. Until then, you have a wonderful day in the company of more programs on Africa Media.
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate this. I very appreciate all.